The night sky over Earth burned brighter than ever, but not with the stars humanity had grown accustomed to. Enormous vessels hung motionless in low orbit, their obsidian hulls gleaming ominously under the moonlight. They were leviathans, blocking the heavens with their presence, the kind of ships that only a civilization far beyond Earth's grasp could create. Humanity's collective heart sank when the message came. "This is Commander Zeltorek of the Zarnathian Empire." A voice thundered through every screen, radio, and communication device on the planet. The tone was cold, calculated, yet tinged with condescension. "You stand on the precipice of greatness, humans. Surrender your resources and pledge fealty to the Zarnathian Empire, and you will be spared. Refuse, and you will burn alongside your world." The Zarnathians did not wait for a reply. Their fleet hovered, a silent executioner over a condemned prisoner. On Earth, chaos reigned. News channels looped footage of the massive crafts, civilians crowded the streets in terror, and governments struggled to maintain order. Despite the turmoil, in a bunker deep beneath Geneva, world leaders gathered in a hastily organized emergency summit. President Eleanor Vasquez of the United States broke the silence. "This is no negotiation. That fleet could obliterate us before we even finished drafting a response." Prime Minister Hiroshi Takeda of Japan leaned forward, his voice calm but steely. "We must understand their motivations. Do they truly need our resources? Or is this conquest for the sake of power?" Dr. Lena Moreau, a leading astrophysicist, interrupted. "The Zarnathian ships exhibit technologies we can't begin to comprehend. Shielding systems, energy weapons, faster than light travel. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have already. This is psychological warfare, a display of dominance." The room buzzed with tension. General Rajesh Kapoor of India stood. "Diplomacy is irrelevant. What matters is our survival. Do we even have a viable countermeasure?" Silence followed. The answer was evident in their grim expressions. Meanwhile, the Zarnathians observed Earth with detached curiosity. Commander Zeltorek stood aboard the bridge of the Eclipse, the fleet's flagship, his multiple eyes scanning holographic projections of Earth's defenses. His species, the Zarnathians, prided themselves on crushing resistance with minimal effort. Yet, as he watched humanity's chaotic but defiant response, he felt a flicker of something alien to his kind. Intrigue. "Primitive," Zeltorek muttered, addressing his second-in-command, Subcommander Velrix. "Yet unpredictable." Velrix sneered. "They are like insects, Commander. They scurry and panic, but they are no threat." "Insects with stingers can be troublesome, Velrix," Zeltorek replied, his tone sharp. "Ensure they are properly surveilled. I want no surprises." Back on Earth, a rogue group of scientists and military strategists worked in secret. Hidden within an abandoned missile silo, they called themselves the Vanguard, a coalition of minds from nations across the globe. Their leader, Colonel Daniel Reeve, addressed his team. "We've seen this before in our history," Reeve said, his voice firm. "Empires demanding tribute, claiming superiority. But Earth has never bowed, not without a fight." Dr. Moreau, now part of the Vanguard, nodded. "We may be outmatched, but we are not without options. If we unite, pool our knowledge and resources, we might find a way to disrupt their technology." The group focused on a daring plan. Initial scans showed a faint energy field connecting the Zarnathian ships, a potential Achilles heel. But time was against them. The Zarnathians had given humanity a deadline, 72 hours to surrender or face annihilation. As the hours ticked by, humanity's resolve crystallized. Protests turned into rallies, and fear morphed into defiance. Across the world, ordinary citizens prepared for the worst. Underground shelters filled with families, while volunteers enlisted in makeshift militias. Artists painted murals of unity, and broadcasters filled the airwaves with calls for courage. The deadline approached, and Earth delivered its response. President Vasquez stood before the cameras, her face pale but determined. "Commander Zeltorek," she began, addressing the Zarnathians directly. Humanity has faced countless trials, from our own wars to the harshness of nature itself. We do not bow. We will not surrender. If you seek our resources, come and take them. But know this: we will fight, not just for ourselves, but for every species that values freedom. The message was broadcast back to the Zarnathians. On the eclipse, Zeltorek smirked. So they choose extinction. Very well. The Zarnathian fleet began to move, their ships casting long shadows over Earth. But in the silence before the storm, a spark of hope lingered among the vanguard. Humanity had chosen defiance, and in that defiance, they found their strength. The stage was set. The war for Earth had begun. The Zarnathian fleet moved with chilling precision, their vessels descending into Earth's atmosphere like harbingers of doom. The lead ship, Eclipse, directed its smaller counterparts to strategic positions over major cities. From space, Earth's vibrant lights seemed to dim under the fleet's oppressive shadow. Humanity braced for the inevitable. The first strike came without warning. A single Zarnathian cruiser unleashed a beam of searing energy, obliterating a communications satellite in orbit. The explosion sent debris scattering, a stark reminder of the aliens' power. Across the globe, militaries scrambled to respond. Fighters launched, missiles were armed, and anti-air systems activated. But every attempt to counter the invaders ended in futility. The Zarnathian shields absorbed Earth's most advanced weaponry like ripples in a pond. In a fortified bunker beneath Colorado, Colonel Daniel Reeve and his team at the Vanguard monitored the unfolding chaos. The room buzzed with activity, holographic displays showing real-time footage of the Zarnathian assault. "Conventional weapons are useless," Reeve muttered, his jaw clenched. "We're swatting flies at a hurricane." Dr. Lena Moreau stepped forward, her eyes fixed on a schematic of the Zarnathian fleet. "Not entirely. Look here." She pointed to faint energy trails connecting the ships. "Their shields are powered by a central relay on the flagship. If we can disrupt it, their entire defense network collapses." Reeve raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly do we disrupt it?" Lena hesitated, then glanced at a nearby console. "We've been developing something unconventional. Enhanced nuclear warheads outfitted with EMP payloads. If we can detonate them close enough to the flagship, the EMP should overload their systems." The room fell silent. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. General Kapoor broke the silence. "If we fail, we lose our only chance. And the cost?" Reeve cut him off. "The cost is irrelevant if we don't act. Prep the warheads." "We don't have time to debate." As the team scrambled to execute the plan, the Zarnathians launched their second wave. Beams of energy rained down on Earth's military installations, obliterating air bases, naval fleets, and command centers. Civilians watched in horror as news channels broadcast the destruction live. Yet, amid the devastation, pockets of resistance emerged. Guerrilla fighters armed with drones and improvised explosives struck at Zarnathian ground units, slowing their advance. On the Eclipse, Commander Zeltorek observed humanity's response with a mixture of amusement and irritation. "Persistent creatures," he remarked to Subcommander Velrix. "They fight like cornered beasts." Velrix sneered. "Their defiance is meaningless. Shall we begin planetary sterilization?" Zeltorek raised a clawed hand. "Not yet. Let them exhaust themselves. Resistance makes the conquest sweeter." Back on Earth, the Vanguard prepared for their counterstrike. 3 stealth bombers, each carrying a modified warhead, took off under the cover of darkness. Their mission: penetrate the Zarnathian fleet's perimeter and deliver the payloads to the Eclipse. Inside one of the bombers, Captain Elena Hayes gripped the controls tightly. The young pilot had volunteered for the mission, fully aware of its risks. "We're flying into a death trap," her co-pilot muttered. "Then let's make it count," Hayes replied, her voice steady. As the bombers approached the fleet, Zarnathian fighters intercepted them. the air filled with streaks of plasma fire and explosions as Earth's most advanced aircraft engaged in a desperate dogfight. 2 bombers were destroyed, their crews sacrificing themselves to clear a path for Hayes' craft. "We're through," Hayes shouted as her bomber broke past the defensive line. The Eclipse loomed ahead, its massive hull glowing with energy. Arming the payload. On the ground, Reeve and Moreau watched anxiously as the bomber transmitted its final signal. "We've got a lock," Hayes said. "Detonating in 3, 2. The screen went dark. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a shockwave rippled through the Zarnathian fleet. The Eclipse shuddered as its shields flickered and died. Across the globe, Zarnathian ships faltered, their once impenetrable defenses now vulnerable. Cheers erupted in the Vanguard bunker. "We did it," Moreau exclaimed, tears streaming down her face. Reeve, however, remained grim. "It's not over. They'll retaliate." On the Eclipse, Zeltorix staggered as the ship's system sputtered. Velric snarled, "Impossible! How could they—" "Silence!" Zeltorix barked. His gaze hardened as he stared at Earth. "They've drawn blood. Now! We show them the price of defiance." The Zarnathian fleet regrouped, their weapons charging for a final, devastating assault. On Earth, humanity prepared for the worst, their brief victory a fragile ember against the storm to come. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the Zarnathians had been wounded. And in that wound, humanity found hope. The Eclipse burned. Smoke poured from ruptured vents. Sparks danced across shattered consoles, and alarms wailed through its corridors. Commander Zeltorix stood amidst the chaos, his imposing frame unshaken even as his ship groaned under the strain. His officers scrambled to stabilize critical systems, but the damage was severe. "Status report," Zeltorix demanded, his voice cutting through the cacophony. Velrix, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, stumbled to his side. "Shields are down. Weapon systems are at 30%. Our fleet is vulnerable." Zeltorix's eyes narrowed. "And the humans? They're mobilizing," Velrix growled. "Their forces are converging on our weakened ships. They mean to finish us." The commander's mandibles clicked in frustration. He had underestimated these creatures. Primitive, yes, but their ingenuity and tenacity had turned the tide of battle. Still, surrender was not in the Zarnathian vocabulary. "Prepare the fleet for a counterstrike," Zeltorix ordered. "We will remind them why the Zarnathian Empire is feared across the stars." On Earth, the Vanguard wasted no time capitalizing on the breakthrough. Colonel Reeve stood at the center of the command room, his voice steady as he directed the next phase of the operation. "Focus fire on their exposed ships," he commanded. "Target engines and weapon systems. We need to cripple their mobility." Dr. Moreau monitored the data streams, her fingers flying across the console. "Their formation is breaking," she reported. "If we press now, we can scatter them." Across the globe, humanity rallied. Fighter jets, drones, and ground-based artillery launched coordinated assaults on the Zarnathian fleet. Civilians turned resistance fighters armed themselves with whatever they could find, striking at Zarnathian ground units with guerrilla tactics. The alien invaders, once invincible, now struggled to maintain control. Captain Elena Hayes, miraculously alive after ejecting from her doomed bomber, had joined a resistance cell in New York. From the ruins of a skyscraper, she directed a team of volunteers operating stolen Zarnathian plasma rifles. "Focus on the walkers' legs," she instructed, pointing to the towering machines patrolling the streets. "Take out their mobility, and they'll fall like dominoes." Her team opened fire, the alien weapons humming with power. One of the walkers collapsed in a shower of sparks, its pilot ejecting in panic. Cheers erupted among the resistance fighters, but Hayes remained focused. "This isn't over. Keep moving." Above, the battle intensified. The Zarnathian fleet, disoriented and vulnerable, struggled to regroup. On the Eclipse, Zeltorek watched in fury as human forces exploited every weakness. "Commander," Velric said, his voice trembling, "we must retreat. The humans have the advantage." Zeltorek's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. "Retreat? Against these vermin?" Velric hesitated, then spoke with uncharacteristic boldness. "Commander, survival is paramount. We can regroup, rebuild, and return stronger. But if we stay, we risk losing everything." For a long moment, Zeltorek said nothing. Then, with a growl of reluctant acceptance, he issued the order. "Signal the fleet. Begin withdrawal. But mark my words, Velric, this is not the end." As the Zarnathian ships began to retreat, Earth erupted in celebration. The skies cleared as the massive vessels vanished into the void, leaving behind only wreckage and the faint hum of victory. In the Vanguard bunker, cheers and applause filled the room. Reeve allowed himself a rare smile, though it was tinged with exhaustion. "We did it," he said, his voice quiet. Dr. Moreau, tears glistening in her eyes, nodded. For now, the aftermath of the battle was bittersweet. Cities lay in ruins. Millions mourned the loss of loved ones, and Earth's military forces were decimated. Yet, amid the devastation, there was hope. Humanity had faced the unthinkable and emerged victorious, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they would not yield. Weeks later, as the world began to rebuild, President Vasquez addressed a united Earth from the steps of the United Nations. "Today, we stand not as nations, but as one people," she declared. "We have shown the universe that Earth will not bow to tyranny. We have paid a heavy price, but our spirit remains unbroken. Let this victory be a warning to those who would seek to conquer us. Humanity is not prey. We are a force to be reckoned with." In orbit, the wreckage of Zarnathian ships served as a grim monument to the battle. But on the fringes of the solar system, the remnants of the Zarnathian fleet lingered. On the eclipse, Zeltorek stared at the blue-green planet with a mix of anger and respect. "They are more formidable than we anticipated," he admitted, "but they have only delayed the inevitable." Velric, standing beside him, dared to ask, "What now, Commander?" Zeltorek's eyes gleamed. "Now we prepare. Next time, there will be no mercy." Back on Earth, Colonel Reeve stood on a hill overlooking a city being rebuilt. Dr. Moreau joined him, the wind carrying the sounds of construction and laughter. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. Reeve nodded. "Absolutely. But next time, we'll be ready." Humanity's victory was a beginning, not an end. The stars held new dangers, but also new opportunities. And Earth, scarred but unbroken, would face them all with unyielding resolve.